If there is one thing that we can all agree on, it's that all of us hate getting spam calls or text in what seems like a never-ending onslaught of random numbers calling you at all hours of the day. Just a few days ago, I got a spam call at 3 o'clock in the morning, and a few days before that, I got thrown into a WhatsApp group chat to celebrate the graduation of a person that I've never met. Things like that, while annoying, are even more concerning when you realize that the entire reason you are even in that situation is because your data has been sold. That is where today's sponsor, Aura, comes in. Aura is an identity theft protection software that monitors your personal and sensitive information on the dark web and public database records. With the alarming rate at which major global companies are being hacked, it's truly a no-brainer as to why you need to protect your data. And when I say big companies, I do mean big ones. Yahoo, Facebook, Capital One, Adobe, and Target are just a few of the many that have fallen victim to hackers. Not to mention the recent Ticketmaster hack that put the data of 560 million users for sale on the dark web. If you've ever bought an event ticket, your full name, address, email address, phone number, and credit card data could be vulnerable right now. While Ticketmaster said they wouldn't do anything to help its customers, fortunately there is something you can do about it that doesn't involve falling off the grid and using smoke signals to communicate. Aura not only monitors your information and alerts you of any weird activity, it also will remove your information from data broker websites. Along with that, I also get transaction monitoring, a VPN, a password manager, identity theft insurance, and so much more. In today's ever-changing world, you truly never can be too safe. Right now, my subscribers can get a 14-day free trial to Aura. Head on over to the link in the description and start taking control over your data today.
4 years ago, a 29-year-old woman was executed while setting up a garage sale at her home in Tomball, and tonight still, the killer's identity remains a mystery.
We don't know who did this. We believe it's somebody that knew her, but we're clueless, and it's hard to trust.
What do you do with your weekends? Maybe you play in a recreational sports league. Maybe you volunteer with a charity or attend a religious service. Maybe you lie on the couch and binge YouTube. Well, if you are Elizabeth Barraza and her husband Sergio, you do something a little more elaborate. Or, in Liz's case, you did. Liz was a big fan of Harry Potter and Star Wars, and on many weekends she could be found in full cosplay. Liz and Sergio were members of the 501st Stormtrooper Legion, a kind of Star Wars fan club for a very specific kind of cosplayer. The members of the 501st build and wear highly detailed, screen-accurate costumes belonging to villainous characters in the Star Wars universe. Originally, the Legion focused on people making and wearing their own Stormtrooper armor, but over time it expanded to include people dressing up as other kinds of Imperial soldiers, Sith Lords, and other villains. Despite their bad guy aesthetic, the 501st is well known as a charitable organization, often organizing visits to children's hospitals and other charity events. If you need someone to raise money for your charity drive by letting random strangers pay to shoot space villains with Nerf guns, the 501st is your first call. They describe themselves as bad guys doing good. Liz's serial number with the 501st was TB93474, meaning that she played a biker scout, one of the soldiers on the flying speeder bikes from the Return of the Jedi. If you look her up online today, you'll find photos of her in several different costumes, and at least one image of her and Sergio kissing in the background while their helmets sit side by side in the foreground. Liz and Sergio met while they were students at Sam Houston State University in Huntsville, Texas. They adopted a dachshund puppy named Diesel while they were in college, and they got married on February 1st of 2014. By early 2019, Sergio was working at his father's business installing flooring, while Liz worked as a data reporter for the Rosen Group, an engineering firm that works with energy companies in and around Houston, Texas. The couple was preparing to celebrate their 5th wedding anniversary with a trip to Orlando, Florida to visit Disney World and Universal Studios. Liz had already packed her Gryffindor suitcase and just had a few loose ends to tie up before they left. One of those loose ends was hosting a garage sale on Friday and Saturday, being January 25th and 26th, before their flight left on the 27th. The goal was to raise a little extra money for souvenirs at the theme parks. On the morning of Friday, January 25th, 2019, Liz went to Starbucks a little after 6 a.m. for coffee. She returned at 6:16 to the house she shared with Sergio in Tomball, Texas, a suburb of Houston. For the next half hour, she and Sergio could be seen on a neighbor's security camera, setting up displays of items for the sale. At 6:48 a.m., Sergio left in a white van to go to work. At 6:51 a.m., the security camera shows a black Nissan Frontier pickup truck, a vehicle that had been spotted on other cameras in the neighborhood earlier, driving into frame. The truck executes a three-point turn and parks behind Liz's car. Someone leaves the truck and walks into the frame from the right, heading directly towards the driveway where Liz is still setting up. The two figures interact for about 6 seconds, and then suddenly, the stranger extends an arm and shoots Liz 3 times. The first bullet goes through her neck and hits the house behind her, where police will later recover it. The second and third shots bury themselves into her chest. Liz falls on her back, and the shooter fires a fourth shot directly into her face, killing her. The shooter then calmly walks back to the truck and leaves. A few seconds later, the Nissan Frontier comes speeding back into the frame from the right, jumping the curb before getting all 4 tires back onto the asphalt and speeding away. 2 minutes after the killing, the truck is seen driving past the house again. After that, it was picked up on several security cameras and then disappeared in an area with no camera coverage. Unfortunately, there are no clear shots of the killer's face or the truck's license plate. 3 different neighbors called 911. Liz was rushed to the hospital via helicopter. However, her injuries were too catastrophic for her to be saved. She was pronounced dead on Saturday afternoon, and her organs were donated. In death, Liz Barraza saved 4 lives, and her corneas gave a 5th person their sight. On February 1st, on what would have been Liz and Sergio's 5th wedding anniversary, her family and friends held a public vigil at the house. They raised wands and lightsabers toward the sky to demand justice for Liz. But so far, justice has been very slow to come. As of the writing of this video, despite a $50,000 reward for information, the murder of Liz Barraza remains unsolved. And in the absence of hard facts, rumors and speculation are bound to run wild. If you look at the security video, or stills from it, you'll see that the murderer and the victim take up only a few pixels each. There isn't really enough detail to make out faces or the license plate, however, there are still a few tantalizing possible clues. The figure of the murderer is mostly light in color, and they are wearing a thigh-length garment that seems to fit closely at the waist but flaps freely around their hips as they are walking across the street. Whether it's a short robe, a jacket, or something else is unfortunately impossible to determine. They also appear to be pretty close to Liz in height, and the combination of their short stature and the fact that something flutters behind their head as they walk away has led some to conclude that the killer is a woman with long hair, possibly wearing a short bathrobe. It probably does sound strange to theorize that someone went out in their bathrobe to commit a murder, but honestly, everything about this killing is strange, and a short woman in a bathrobe isn't the only possible explanation. You've probably heard that you are most likely to be murdered by someone close to you. This may sound counterintuitive, but it makes sense when you think about it. Killing someone is hard work and it's very high risk, and most people don't do difficult high-risk things unless they have a very good reason. It's hard to come up with a good reason to kill someone that you've never met. And for someone to go through all of this trouble to put 4 bullets into a woman setting up a garage sale, it was probably personal. At least to them. And yes, I can hear you shouting at the screen that Sergio must have done it. and Sergio has been a popular suspect pretty much from day one. But he's not the only suspect, and there are several good reasons to think it's not him on the video. The black truck could be seen on video driving around other parts of the neighborhood, while Sergio was still in the driveway helping Liz set up. The 4 minutes between Sergio's departure and the shooting really doesn't leave much time for him to switch vehicles, change into a bathrobe and wig, and come back to kill his wife. And perhaps most importantly, Liz was significantly shorter than Sergio, almost a full head shorter in fact, according to most of the photos that I've seen of them together. And I can't think of a way, really, for someone to suddenly lose that much height and miraculously gain it back by the time police show up to ask them questions. Of course, that doesn't mean that the killer on the video isn't connected to Sergio in some way, but it doesn't mean that there is a connection either. Some internet detectives have suggested that the shooter may be wearing some kind of disguise or costume. In August of 2019, a blogger on True Crime Society wrote, "I've searched this list of approved 501st costumes and studied every single female costume in here. A few of them closely resemble what could have been worn by the killer. Could her murder somehow be linked to the 501st Legion lifestyle? That's definitely a rabbit hole I have traveled down." While I'm not a fan of the phrase 501st Legion lifestyle, it's definitely true that cosplayers can pull off some remarkable physical transformations. Just looking at various photos of Liz in her Star Wars and Harry Potter costumes show how a change of outfit can make someone look completely different. Could Liz have died at the hands of someone from the world that brought her so much joy? Someone who was unlikely to be recognized outside of whatever they wore to commit the crime? Maybe. Or maybe not. Another avenue that many have theorized could have been the motive was Sergio's own father being the one responsible. The reasons behind this are because, for one, Sergio himself has accused his father of the crime, or at least was the mastermind behind it. This comes from a conversation that Sergio stated occurred between Liz and his father when Liz was complaining about Sergio's paycheck bouncing. Sergio, after all, worked for his father, and he would be the one to point the finger at for a paycheck bouncing. Some say the reason for the paycheck bouncing was because Sergio's father himself was having some serious financial issues due to his numerous affairs. If Sergio and his father planned Liz's killing and it worked, then Liz's $500,000 life insurance policy would cause any financial problem to disappear. And from that one theory alone, we have two of the biggest motives for murder: money and revenge. The theory that Sergio's dad either hired someone or did the killing himself is still debated to this day, but given how the crime, at least to me, seems highly orchestrated, almost professionally done, it causes me to hesitate on ruling this theory out. This unfortunately is just one of the numerous theories that I have come across with this case. I've read stories that Sergio did it for the life insurance money, that a member of the 501st did it because they wanted to be with Sergio, that it was a gang initiation, a case of mistaken identity, organ harvesting, an angry ex-lover, and a maniac who simply wanted to kill. And that's what makes the case of Liz Barraza so disturbing. Maybe she knew her killer, or maybe she didn't. Maybe it was some kind of wild cosplay drama with tragic consequences. Maybe she was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. It could have been one of the hundreds of different scenarios that online sleuths have dreamed up. Or it could be something that no one has thought of yet. All we know for sure is that one quiet morning on a sleepy suburban street, somebody did the unthinkable to a woman whose friends described her as someone who never met a stranger. And if it could happen to Liz, who else could be in the crosshairs?
Well, it sounds like something out of a horror movie. A man is killed, his corpse defiled, and then dismembered. Authorities have identified the suspect.
What we know about him, Rosemary, is that he is a narcissist extraordinaire, to the point that he even posted his own video of him, committing this very, very horrific crime. Fury that he targeted the people who he felt were standing in his way. So basically, the portrait of a man that people are looking for is a very disturbing one to show. And of course, that's this man.
Some people will do anything to be famous. The streets of Los Angeles are teeming with people who come from all over the world in hopes of becoming celebrities. A quick scroll through YouTube or TikTok will turn up dozens, if not hundreds, of people vying for your attention, hoping that this clip or that stunt will be what finally makes them a household name. Hell, people still audition for reality TV shows even though you probably can't name a single contestant from more than a year ago. Famous for a season is still famous. But not everyone has the same definition of fame. And sometimes the price of that fame is paid by someone whose name will never make it into the headlines. On May 25th, 2012, users on the shock website bestgore.com found themselves looking at something outrageous even by their standards. They were used to seeing videos of beheadings, grisly industrial accidents, and suicides. But the 11-minute clip that went under the title "One Lunatic, One Ice Pick" was something new. The video showed a man tied to a bed frame as someone repeatedly stabbed him over and over again in the chest with a long, thin weapon that did indeed look like the titular ice pick. Once the man was dead, his killer picked up a kitchen knife and proceeded to cut up the corpse, actually feeding some of the flesh to a dog and cutting off other pieces with a knife and fork as if he were preparing for a meal. The audio track included the sound of the New Order song True Faith blasting in the apartment where the victim was killed, and the camera showed a poster for the classic 1942 film Casablanca hanging on a wall nearby. Reactions to the video were mixed, to say the very least. Some users demanded that the owner of the website take the video down and report it to the police. Others insisted that it had to be fake. Regardless, the video racked up 300,000 views in its first 4 hours online, and people began posting reaction videos to YouTube, showing themselves shaking and crying and urging their viewers not to seek out what they had just watched. Mark Merrick, the owner of Best Gore, would ultimately be charged with corrupting public morals under Canadian obscenity laws. But for some users, the question wasn't what should be done about the site hosting the video. It was who had uploaded it, and more importantly, why. Most of the big hit videos on Best Gore weren't made for Best Gore. Some of them came from security cameras that happened to capture grisly events. Others were deliberately staged and filmed for some other purpose, like taunting authorities or sending a political message. They went up on Best Gore after they'd done what they'd originally been meant to do. Best Gore was simply all about curation. But One Lunatic, One Ice Pick hadn't appeared anywhere else online before it landed on Best Gore. It seemed like it had been deliberately created to shock the shock site. But who would want so badly to be internet famous that they'd film themselves committing a capital crime? You see, the video unfortunately wasn't fake. And it wasn't the filmmaker's first shot at fame. And it wasn't over yet. On May 26th, a lawyer in Montana reported the video to multiple law enforcement organizations, including the FBI. But his tip was ignored. 3 days later, on May 29th, a blood-stained cardboard box decorated with a red heart was delivered to the national headquarters of Canada's Conservative Party in Ottawa. A high-ranking staffer opened it and discovered a severed left foot, already stinking from decomposition. Canada's mail service went on high alert, and soon a second bloody box was discovered in a mail processing center. This one containing a severed left hand and addressed to the Liberal Party. Meanwhile, a janitor in Montreal found a rotting torso in a suitcase on a garbage pile behind an apartment building. Police searched the alley where the suitcase was found and turned up bloody clothes and papers connecting that particular heap of trash to a former tenant of the building, and his name was Luka Magnotta. Security camera footage from inside of the building showed someone who looked very similar to Luka hauling multiple garbage bags outside. When police searched apartment 208 inside of the building, they found blood on the mattress, inside of a fridge, and inside of a bathtub. The bathroom floor was spattered with blood, and there was a blood-soaked shower curtain that stank horribly. Inside a closet, someone had scrawled in red marker, "If you don't like the reflection, don't look in the mirror. I don't care." The tenant of that room, Luka Magnotta, was nowhere to be found. On May 30th, authorities confirmed that the foot, hand, and torso belonged to the same individual, but the gruesome surprise didn't end there. On June 5th, a right foot was delivered to St. George's School, a private prep school for boys in Vancouver, British Columbia. A package containing a right hand arrived at False Creek Elementary School, also in Vancouver, both packages having originated in Montreal. On June 13th, authorities matched the DNA of the dismembered body to a missing person, and the victim finally had a name. Jun Lin was a 33-year-old computer engineer from China. He'd been enrolled at Concordia University in Montreal, and everyone who knew him spoke well of him. He was able to live openly as a gay man in Canada, something that really wasn't possible back home in Wuhan. And he had been in a committed relationship with another man for about a year and a half. Lin's family in China hadn't been aware of his sexual orientation, and there were reports that they were pressuring him to find a nice girl and settle down. The two lovers had separated in mid-May of 2012 when Lin's boyfriend returned to China, but they managed to stay friends after the breakup and texted each other frequently until May 24th. That was the last day anyone saw Lin alive. It is also theorized that that was the day that he met Luka Magnotta. Luka Rocco Magnotta had started life under a different name, Eric Clinton Kirk Newman, though I'll keep calling him Luka to avoid any confusion because he had a lot of aliases. He grew up in a difficult family. His father was eventually diagnosed with schizophrenia, and his mother abused her children, often locking them out of the house and once dumping the kids' pet rabbits outside on a cold night to freeze to death. Young Luka bounced between his mother's home and his grandparents, and he was homeschooled for some time, where he later said that he was taught that the world was a dirty and dangerous place. He spent 2 years in a public high school where his classmates would later describe him as very vain and obsessed with his looks. He was also obsessed with movies. His favorite titles included both Casablanca and American Psycho. And after learning about the crimes that Luka committed, the latter makes a lot of sense. By the time Luka was in his early 20s, he was working as a stripper and appearing in a few adult films. But his adult film career didn't really go anywhere, and soon he was finding other ways to feed his appetite for money and fame. In 2004, he was accused of befriending a woman with the mental capacity of a child, getting her to apply for credit cards, and using those cards himself to rack up massive bills. Police also alleged that he sexually assaulted the woman and videotaped it, though that particular charge was later dropped. He pleaded guilty to the credit card charges and got a 9-month non-custodial sentence and 12 months of probation. In the second half of the 2000s, he ramped up his efforts to make a name for himself. He auditioned for a reality TV show, now going by Luka Magnotta. He created dozens of fake accounts on Facebook and various forums, hyping up his modeling work and his minor roles in adult films, calling himself the next James Dean. In 2008 alone, he had been in a back and forth with Wikipedia, trying to keep a page about himself active, even though it didn't really meet the site's notability standards. He also advertised himself as an escort online under the name Jimmy. One client actually left a review describing him as cold and remote. And then in late 2010, he posted a video to YouTube under the title, "One Guy, Two Kittens." By the way, if you're noticing a pattern in the video's titles and you're not sure why it's there, congratulations on being young enough to miss that era. Luka's kitten video wasn't up for long, but it did make an impression. I'm not going to state what he does to those kittens in the video, but I will say that it was bad enough to cause most viewing it trauma that will never leave their minds. I know, because I saw it. The clip was removed from YouTube in a hurry, but not before animal rights activists saw it and started a digital manhunt. They created a group called the Animal Beta Project, or AB Project for short, and they tried to identify everything visible in the video in an attempt to track down the person who made it. They pointed out the people who abuse animals can escalate to harming human beings. And in Luka's case, they were right. They actually made a documentary about this exact manhunt called Don't Fuck with Cats. The digital sleuths had trouble tracking Luka down, however, even as he posted more videos. Luka used a series of online aliases to hype up each video before it dropped. And then on May 15th, 2012, Luka's alter egos began posting about something new. "Where can I watch the One Lunatic, One Ice Pick video?" one of them asked. And 9 days later was when Jun Lin disappeared. By the time the last of Luka's gory packages had arrived, police had joined the hunt the AB Project had started. Interpol issued a red notice for him requesting that any Interpol member that found him were to arrest him and extradite him back to Canada immediately. He moved around Europe for about a week before police finally tracked him down in an internet cafe in Berlin. And true to his vain nature, when he was arrested, he was in the middle of reading articles about himself online. Luka admitted to killing Lin, but claimed he wasn't responsible for his actions because of various mental health problems. A 10-week trial ensued, and Luka was ultimately convicted and sentenced to life in prison. He continued to try to make himself a celebrity in the years since his conviction, taking any opportunity to get into the news. A 2015 article in the Vancouver Sun described him collecting pen pals and telling them how much he liked the food in prison and how much he enjoyed having snowball fights and hot chocolate with fellow inmates. It all sounded calculated to simply create outrage the moment it lands in a newspaper. Oh, and he also coaxed his various correspondents into sending him thousands of dollars to spend on really whatever he wanted in the prison canteen. As of the writing of this video, Luka Magnotta still doesn't have his own Wikipedia page. A search for his name links to the perpetrator section of the article, The Murder of Jun Lin. Concordia University had established a fund to create the Jun Lin Award, a financial award designed to help students from China attend the university. In a public statement, Lin's family thanked the university for memorializing their son. They ended with the words, "To commemorate Jun Lin, please let us remember his kindness, diligence, and love for life." One thing that has always been fascinating to me on YouTube is lost media. I know most everyone watching this video is aware of what lost media is, but for those of you who are hearing about it for the first time, allow me to briefly explain. Lost media is usually a film or a video, but sometimes audio recordings, video games, still images, or even text that definitely existed at one point, but is now inaccessible or lost. Most lost media gets lost through perfectly ordinary means. A fire in a vault at a movie studio destroys the last copies of the movies that the studio made, or an early TV show was broadcast live and not recorded at all. You get the idea. And then there's the other way media gets lost. It existed at one point and someone deliberately prevented its release or pulled it out of circulation. For example, the 2 teenage boys who killed 13 people at Columbine High School in 1999 left behind videotapes of themselves that are rumored to explain their motives. But some of those tapes have never been released to the public out of fear that they would provide inspiration or instructions for copycats. This is a story about the second kind of lost media. It's not completely lost yet. If you look hard enough, you can still find it, but I am going to advise you to not seek it out. It is one of those things that you cannot unsee. Xiao Quimei was a 23-year-old tower crane operator in the city of Suzhou in eastern China. Tower cranes are used to lift heavy loads high in the air, and you'll usually see them on large-scale construction sites for projects like high-rise buildings. Xiao was relatively young to be operating such a powerful machine. In the United States, the average age of a tower crane operator is in their mid-40s, and the certification process makes it the kind of job you can't just walk into off the street. But by all accounts, Xiao loved her work, and she took pride in helping to build the future of her rapidly developing city. She was married and a mother of 2 children. She also had more than 100,000 followers on TikTok. According to the British tabloid The Sun, Xiao was something of an influencer who would often post videos and live streams from inside the cab of her crane, talking about her job and giving viewers glimpses into a world that few people get to see. This is a pretty popular niche on social media, with people posting similar content like train operators or people who work massive construction equipment. On June 20th, 2021 at 5:40 p.m., Xiao was finishing her workday and getting ready to go home. There are some conflicting accounts of what exactly happened at the time. The Sun claims that she was live streaming from inside of the crane with her phone in her hand, but they also quote her family as saying that she was extremely professional and kept her phone in her bag during work hours. Then again, 5:40 p.m. might have been outside of those work hours. And this is where I ran into the media coverage that is entirely in Mandarin. So forgive me if I made a few mistakes on what I read. Regardless of how professional Xiao was or wasn't at work, sometime around 5:40 p.m., someone was streaming a video from her phone to TikTok. And at some point, Xiao took a step she would, very briefly, live to regret. Witnesses on the construction site saw Xiao fall from the crane. Reports claim that she had her phone in her hand. A video clip appeared online shortly afterwards showing scaffolding and other equipment blurring past the camera with occasional glimpses of a sky broken by sunlit clouds. The still images used in most of the articles about Xiao are almost beautiful if you don't know what they are allegedly from. The crane was 160 feet, or about 49 meters tall. An adult human body hitting the ground from that height would strike with a lot of force. I ran the numbers through a car crash impact calculator, and as near as I can tell, it's the equivalency of suddenly being pressed under 6,700 pounds or 3,000 kilograms of weight. For reference, that's like having 2 mid-sized cars suddenly sitting on top of you. It won't surprise you to hear that Xiao didn't make it home that day. By the time her story landed in the English language news a month later, it had been turned into some kind of twisted morality tale. The vain, vapid influencer who supposedly died for a few more livestream views. A video clip alleged to be taken from her final livestream and supposedly showing the moments of her fall has been passed around the internet like a ghoulish Pokemon card. Maybe it's real and maybe it's not. Either way, I don't recommend that you seek it out. If it's fake, you're letting your clicks reward someone who made a fake snuff film. If it's not, well, she had a family, including 2 kids. How do you think they feel about that video being out there? Xiao Quimei was a human being. She was the mother of 2 children, and she was someone doing a very difficult, dangerous, and important job who wanted to share her perspective with the world. She was just an ordinary person like any of us. An ordinary person who just took one wrong step.